Let's listen in live here.
Mr. President,
Нам всім це важливо, і їм важливо.
It's important to us. I think it's important to everyone. Now, I think with all, we can start just so we can start talking. Yes, don't forget to raise your tablet. І ви казали, що перемога буде цього року. Ви чули, західні друзі, західні партнери кажуть, стільки будуть допомагати, скільки цього потрібно. Ви знаєте, що росіяни кажуть, що час грає на їх руку. Чому ви думаєте, що перемога може бути цього року?
Mr. President, I'm interested in the timeline. Today, on the anniversary, you spoke to your own forces and you called for victory within this year. You have heard the Western friends, your partners, talk about as long as it takes. You know that the Russian leader believes that time is on his side. Why do you think that it's possible by the end of the year, and how do you assess the meaning of as long as it takes from your Ukrainian perspective?
Дуже дякую за запитання.
Thank you for this question.
Я дійсно дуже хочу.
I really want,
І вважаю, якщо кожен
and I
з нас
think that every single partner, everyone, will remain strong, will remain just as a fist. If all of our partners are united for the sake of our victory, because that's a victory of values, if all of them will remain committed to their words, to their time frames, and that's not going to be just talking, but we've already shown ourselves as strong partners, and there's evidence to that. So should all of us do this important homework,
Нашого охоронця.
the bodyguard has... Okay, so if we'll fulfill our tasks, then we'll definitely have this victory. I'm confident that we'll have this victory. And I hope this will happen this year. We have everything to have it this year. We have friends, we have diplomacy, we have you. We have combined everything against this wave of invaders. I think not a single country in the world can withstand on its own something against this war. I think only the United States would be capable to do that, but fortunately they don't have neighbors like that. There's just a couple of countries like that in the world. And Ukraine is facing this war not alone. We have friends. We make sure this aggression, this war would not continue anywhere else. We clearly understand what the Putin wants, what Kremlin wants. We understand what the military political leadership want. So it's important for everyone to focus, to stay working in their own places, and that's it. And then we'll have victory. Because the truth, the righteous, is on our side. And the children that we love, and it's so horrible when we are losing them in the battlefield, around the battlefield. But they, Russians, they have countless of victims and casualties. That's their choice. Now, ICTV, Oksana.
Добрий вечір, пане президенте.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. First, thank you for your example of resilience, invincibility, and belief. We all believe in the victory, but now a lot of international experts are telling that we have a war of exhaustion, and not a single party would have resources to have an victory, clear victory, and then there will be a negotiation. So how do these negotiations look like? What's the ultimate victory for Ukraine looks like? I'm not thinking theoretically about how those negotiations could take place. We make very specific steps. Ukraine has initiated the peace formula at G20, although we would really like to have it G19 and not G20 in the world. So we've briefed everyone on the peace formula, how we see that. And then there's the outcome of what Russia has done here and how it has an impact not only on our security, because there are different crises caused by Russia's aggressive steps. As you know, the occupation of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, and then the blocking of the sea and all the chains of supply as part of the full security. You know all of those aspects. So what else can I tell you? We've offered the steps. And today we can see some interest in fulfilling this peace formula and supporting that. And I'd like to express words of gratitude to the country, because yesterday, in fact today night, 41 countries has supported our peace initiative at the General Assembly. So the next step would be to engage as much as possible states for the first summit. I want really this summit to be as much fruitful as possible, so that we would have this summit conducted in a place, in a country that would be able to host as much countries of the world as possible. I'm working with our partners, with the team, in order to make sure that not only the strategic partners that are supporting us from the very first days to be there at the Peace Formula Summit, and we're working hard to have representatives from different continents. We're working hard to have Latin America represented at this Global Peace Formula Summit, and so that there would be representatives of the African continent, so they would be engaged in this summit as well. We're also, like, frankly speaking, I would like to have India, I would like to have China participating. That's true. Our task is to engage as much as possible to show the whole world that here's the respect to the territorial integrity, to UN Charter, to anyone's right to leave. And the more countries will engage, the more support we will have. And we have developed the peace formula in a way which is very democratic. So it's a very clear step. So in order to reduce the risks among the countries supporting us, I mean, any country can support like a single point of this peace formula. They could support a nuclear safety, the environmental safety, and you know how many mines are there around the territory of Ukraine. That's why there is a lot of steps that we've offered. And there is also kind of a step that means the bringing of peace, because we need the security guarantees. And this is something we need, like a security package for Ukraine, for Ukrainians. And already we can see that this is the war that has a very significant impact. So security guarantees for the whole Europe. So when there is this fulfillment, and then there is this respect to the international law and to the ordinary people and to the people of Ukraine. So if that would be fulfilled, then we'll get a diplomatic kind of end of this war. But until that moment, we need to fulfill all these points of respect. Thank you. Now, the Mexican TV first row, please.
Wait for your mic, please. Wait for your mic. Wait. Sorry, Mr. President. You were mentioning the resolution in the United Nations, the more than 140 countries that voted, demanding that Russia forces leave Ukraine immediately and without conditions. What do you say to the countries, the minority, that didn't support that resolution, that voted with Russia against it, or that decided to ignore it?
Ви знаєте, напевно, щоб
Now, in order to understand the war, the consequences and the losses as the result of the war, because you're not only losing the territory, but you're losing people, leaving people. And if you're not at war, if you haven't ever lost anyone, then it's hard for you to understand what's happening. What sort of pain is that for everyone around you? And it's hard to spread this information. And this is why we are working every day in order anyone to understand the consequences of the war, not through having this war, because it's painful, it's a weak position, because you're somewhere there, war. You're saying that we're not sure that in this way, but in what way? Should you definitely have a war with torturing, with rapes? Should you need to have it in every house of the war so that the people would finally understand the consequences of this bloody war? And then this big sick leadership of this Russian Federation, then there is this journalism to have this information being spread. It's hard to get this information to those countries that are voting against it. But still, we are working. There's 141 countries who voted in favor of that. There is this support to territorial integrity and sovereignty. So there's the answer. How these countries are, what sort of attitude do they having? So there's an answer in this support. Yes, they have to withdraw from your sovereign territory. Now, how do we work with the other countries? We do work. And I believe that Ukraine really needs to make steps forward, like towards the African countries. I think we worked not at a sufficient level. We didn't pay sufficient attention to the African countries. That is why we have a special program initiated by Ukraine. We are increasing the number of embassies in the region, and then look at the Grain from Ukraine initiative and other initiatives on food security. So this is what you need to do. A daily investments in peace. I think we wasted that time for many years since the beginning of our independence, and that is why currently we are fighting for our independence. And that's not a coincidence. We didn't have a strong fist of partners before the war, and that's right. But now we have it. But we're still lacking a number of individuals at this fist of common support. So, and I'm talking about the African continent, the Latin America. It's also very important, and I would really like to have a conference and a meeting, or rather a summit, with the Latin American countries and Ukraine. And it's very difficult for me to leave outside of Ukraine, but I would go to this meeting to tell their media, to tell their society, like, I'm ready to step forward. Our diplomats are making this step forwards. We're ready to work round the clock. If we'll get more hours in the daytime, we will do that. So this is how you would need to work 30 years. Unfortunately, it was the war that made us work so effectively, but nobody would have expected something like that out of neighboring country of Russia, that you would have something like that from Russia. There's this just willingness to destroy us completely, utterly. And that's why it's not a correction of mistakes. I'd like to say that I don't have any questions to anyone. I don't want to deal with that part of the past. I'm looking at the future. We need the total support of the war, and we will be victorious. We're working on that. And that dialogue is absolutely fair. This is a dialogue with many countries. We've worked on the unification of the European countries, and there's not only the EU member nations, but other countries, countries with different status, with neutral status, and we've worked in order to change this neutrality into the non-neutral status to war. This is also very important. We've worked on this every day, a lot. You have worked on that, and the armed forces have worked on that, because the victory is on the battlefield. That gives confidence. Nobody likes losers, however hard it might sound, but that's the truth. Everyone wants to be victorious. And everyone has to work, like inside the country and outside the country. That's the only way to victory. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, Yalta European strategist, Sir Jeffrey Nice, do you have a question, maybe? First row.
Do I need a microphone?
Yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, those fighting for your country, led by you, have put you on moral peaks, not just high ground, from which you can make requests or demands of the Western world, whose methods of accountability for war crimes are unsatisfactory, incomplete, and very, very slow. Will you, for yourselves, and also for us, push for reform of those systems or additions to them that will ensure there can be, because this is in your country's interest, the earliest possible and conclusive determination of where moral right in this war is and where moral wrong is? And supplementary to that, Mr. President, will you consider, to the extent possible, ensuring that accountability mechanisms for war crimes are dealt with by Ukrainians in Ukraine and in the Ukrainian language, remembering that the countries supporting you, if they found themselves in your terrible and unhappy situation, would demand nothing less for themselves? Thank you.
Дякую за запитання.
Thank you for your question. It's a quite complicated one, but actually it had all the answers in it. It is very profound. And I know there are a lot of risks as far as the peace formula is concerned. Regarding the institutions, first let me speak about the tribunal. Everything starts with political unity. The United Nations platform might not necessarily be a universal one, but there's nothing else that would have more countries that could be politically united. As of now, unfortunately, I don't think there's anything else. And we can support the setting up of the tribunal to hold Russian Federation accountable for war crimes. And we're also working on the mechanism to compensate all the damage caused by Russia on the territory of our country, and to our people.
Okay, we're listening in as international reporters question Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy about the state of affairs on the one-year anniversary, of course, of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He stands resolute, saying that Ukrainians, he says, will win this year. They will be doing this as long as it takes, and also a rallying call for the rest of the world to come on side with Ukraine. Pretty remarkable news conference.